Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance, where you can be a member of the Shannons Club. Pace Farm, the enjoyable egg. Hare and Forbes Machinery House. And Gun Lake Quarries.
It's time now to bring you to the veranda town of Lockhart, New South Wales, in this week's episode of Classic Restos on the Road. When you get a chance, try and unlock these towns. Come on in and have a look. One of these towns is a place by the name of Lockhart, around about a 45-minute drive from Wagga Wagga.
Lockhart was established in 1897. Prior to that, this place was known as Green's Gunya. With a population of a little over 800 people, the town is referred to as the Veranda Town, and it's easy to see why. Local farm machinery, art made from wool, and loads of history awaits you at the Lockhart Museum, or properly named the Green's Gunya Museum, Doris Golder Gallery.
My name's Heather and I'm President of the Lockhart District Historical Society, and welcome to Lockhart. We're very proud of our little town and our museum. Our museum's been going since 1970 and in the last 3 or 4 years we've been able to extend into this wonderful new building. It was a result of 2 dramatic flood situations that we had in town in 2010 and 2012, but we're very proud of what we've been able to achieve in the last few years. The museum caters for a wide range of people, from the very young to the very old. A lot of the older people will be able to reminisce with a lot of the older machinery and household items, but we also offer new aspects. We have a wonderful exhibition of Jackson Strong, and a lot of the younger people would know who Jackson is. He's one of the world champion motocross acrobatic. We also offer a space for Tim Fisher. He was a boy from Borey Creek and he loved Lockhart. He was our local member for Parliament, state and federal, and we have a lot of his memorabilia which is on display, which is wonderful. And a lot of machinery, antique machinery, and Brookon exhibition. Now, that's this whole area was developed from a big sheep station called Brookon, and we have a wonderful exhibition of national significance. We're happy to welcome Classic Restos to Lockhart, and we're really looking forward to the film piece that is done on Lockhart, and we know it's going to further the tourist potential of our town, and we welcome anyone and everyone to come and join us.
Inside the Doris Golder Gallery now. Now this may not be automotive, but it's very, very cool. See these paintings around me? Well, they're not actually paintings. Doris Golder made these herself out of wool. Yeah, bits and pieces of wool matted across the top of each other of different shades to come up with these portrait pictures, which I think is absolutely amazing. Now, some of these masterpieces took around about 3 months to make, but Fred Hollows and his family, the portrait behind me, took 18 months to make, and the attention to detail is incredible.
You walk through the museum, then you walk outside, and that's where things rev up, because the mechanical stuff is outside under the roof of a couple of sheds. We've got mechanical stuff here dating back to 1890, such as this Gunyah machine here. And to tell us more, here's Antique Pete. So Pete, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Fletch.
You're welcome. You're the real deal, aren't you?
Well, I don't know. You might think that. I don't know whether I do.
Well, getting out into the sticks and meeting people like yourself really, help to make episodes such as this. So run us through, what do you do here at the museum?
I sort of, in the early days, I was a lot younger then than I am now, I was used to do a lot with the machinery here. That was sort of the main thing, and the blacksmith shop. And then as things developed, and in later years now, I'm just one of the old timers that have to tell them about stuff. So basically, I just sort of oversee the mechanical stuff here. And because we've been here so long, we know when things came in and where they came from, which has been almost lost over the years with the current president and the committee we have. We're sort of more getting it a bit more organised and a bit more. There's a lot of stuff that in here that is very relevant to the district that's not on display anymore. It's in the museum here, but it's not on display so much because it's just been put aside. And
What can you tell us about the T-model Ford here?
T-model Ford, it came up for sale. A local resident had it, and he sort of thought he was into restorations a bit, and then I don't think he ever restored anything really, but he had it, and he must have decided he didn't want it, and he put it up for sale, and this was a good few years ago, and at the time we debated whether we wanted to buy it. The idea was we bought it because at that time you got to understand the museum wasn't as big and as complex as it is now. So what we used to do, if there was things on around like the local show, or they used to have a Christmas festival thing down in the park, we used to load a bit of stuff up onto utes or trailers and things and put a table there and display it, you see. And it's not so bad loading stuff up and taking it somewhere, but the problem is you've got to bring it back, and if it's 10 o'clock at night, you're not real keen on.
It's just again, it's a drop in the ocean as to what you can see in here. Now, I know you've got a special section to this museum that means a lot to you, and I think it might be that shed over there with the tractors in it. Would that be right?
Yeah, well it's sort of special in some way.
Do you want to go over there and show us that?
We can go over there, Fletch, and have a look.
Years ago, BSA built more bikes than anyone in the world. Beautiful, handcrafted, proper works of art. Real enthusiasts understand. And Shannons, of course. Young Mick's passion's a bit high-tech for me, but deep down, it's the same. And Shannons understand that as well. Which is why Shannons insure our bikes, cars, and now, even our home.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
Hare and Forbes Machinery House has been family owned and operated for over 85 years, and it's easy to see why. Planning on welding? Look at these welding tables and clamps, air compressors and different air tools, sandblasting cabinets, through to spray guns. Everyone is welcome at Machinery House. There are competitive freight rates around Australia, and you can buy online at machineryhouse.com.au. So remember, Hare and Forbes has the range.
This is a 1938 W30 International tractor. It's not done a lot of work, so it's pretty reliable. And I'll just take you through the steps of starting it. I'll start it up for you. First, we'll turn the fuel on. We've just started this McCormick Deering W30, which, for those that don't know, is the forerunner to what we know as International. Now, this one is a local tractor. It was sold locally by a local agent to a local owner, and it was the first tractor the museum had donated to them. Probably not as powerful a tractor as the W30, but in its day, in its late 20s, so there's 10 years difference between the two of them. The Hart-Parr's not as powerful, but you've got to go back to that era and find out that it's a big improvement on a horse steam. The thing I like about this tractor is, firstly, the agent that I mentioned earlier was my grandfather in Smith's Garage in Lockhart. He was the agent for Hart-Parrs and Dodge cars. Sold it, and my father and my uncles always talked about the Hart-Parr tractors they sold, which was 5, and this is one of two that remain. Its uniqueness is what I like. It's a twin cylinder thing. It's very noisy, although it shouldn't be as noisy. There's a mechanical reason why it's noisy, and that is because it's not got part of the exhaust on it. Well, if you're driving it around anywhere, you've got to be careful because the steering is very low geared. And I mean, when we brought it from the other part of the museum around to here, I hadn't driven it for a number of years, and all the joints hadn't been greased. And she sort of got away on me a bit, and if it didn't have a handle on the steering wheel to get hold of it, I would have taken the back out of the shed around there. But it's got all those features, and they were a very reliable machine in their day. And the thing about tractors is, and this in particular, if you look at that tractor, the W30, it's very much comparable in design and everything as a modern tractor. The actual workings of it. This one is completely irrational as far as modern tractors go. The engine is a horizontal engine. It's a twin cylinder horizontal engine, 2 big cylinders instead of 4 little ones. Only got 2 speeds. Top speed is 3 mile an hour. Now, in relation to horses, that's the walking speed of a horse, 3 mile an hour. So you've got the speed of a horse. The thing with the tractor, you don't have to pull up for it to have a spell. It can keep going. So it appealed to mechanically minded farmers. To the horse farmer, that horses were the only way. This was just a thing that you wouldn't want to know anything about. As far as the men that drove them, I would say they'd have to be forward-thinking men, probably younger men of the era. And yeah, probably money would have had a bit to do with it. The coming of what we would call possibly the industrial agriculture. It was the beginning of industrial agriculture, so to speak. So it represents a lot from that point of view.
Now, Pete, I know that this particular fire truck means a lot to you. So what's its brand and what's its year?
Well, Fletch, it's a Garford. This is brand. Its year, I think, is 1922, according to the compliance plate. The story behind it is we had here a K5 International fire truck, which came from the Rock up the road a bit and was pensioned off, and they put the council saw fit to put it in the museum, which was all right. The outcome of that was Canberra Fire Museum got wind of it being here somehow, and they wanted it. Now, a lot of toing and froing went on, and a lot of the committee didn't want to see it go, probably because they didn't understand what this was about.
What can you tell us about the engine and the transmission?
Well, the engine in it is it's a Buda engine, B-U-D-D-A. The unique part about the engine is that it hasn't got a head as such. The head and the block is all in one piece. So if you want to put rings in it, you've got to unbolt the block at the bottom, lift the whole lot off. It's got priming cocks on top of the cylinders. It's got originally it had a Dixie magneto, which is a terrible thing. It's still in the back of it there. We've had to adapt another one to it, which needs a fair bit of machine. I've just made a rough adaptation up for it, but it needs a properly machined one, because the magneto wobbles too much, and it was driven to where it is, but you wouldn't want to take it anywhere.
You were saying before that it's a matched unit, and probably why it was so successful, this model.
Well, yes, Fletch, the thing was, the reading I've done on them, they were in service for such a long time because it seemed as though the engine and the transmission and the pump were all perfectly matched, and they each one seemed to complement the other, which is why they stayed in service. The other reason why they were in service for a long time, particularly in small towns like this, was because they're not much bigger than a car. They fitted in a normal, and you didn't need a truck licence to drive them, they tell me. The last one that was in Lockhart used to come to Smith's garage to get serviced, and we used to just look at that in awe at this thing, and it was just a.
So the years of service, when did this come about, and how long did it run for?
I think Lockhart Fire Brigade started in like the town brigade, I think around about 1926, and they had I think their first vehicle was a, and this is from my father told me, the first vehicle they had, or fire appliance, was some sort of a unit which I think was originally horse-drawn, but they adapted it to pull behind a truck. So the firemen around town, when something got going, they used to bring, well, Billy Fraser was the captain, and he's an icon of Lockhart in early days, which the modern day people wouldn't remember or know, but Billy they used to use his Chev 4 truck to pull the fire thing around, and I think one day it came unhooked, I think is how the story went, and ran into a tree.
As it does.
Yes, right, you're right, Fletch. So they were issued with a Garford, and all the Garfords, as I understand it, and I would stand correction on this, all Garfords were issued with solid rubber tyres. Yeah, okay. So, and they had one on, there's a book called Green's Gunya Pavers. I think it's about the pavers in the main street, that are on the main street. And it gives a history of things, which it gives the history of the fire trucks. And
so with pneumatic tyres, it would suggest that it could have ran in service into the 50s?
Yeah, well, what New South Wales did with them, a lot of them, they converted them from solid rubber to pneumatics. And I think the first two were solid, and then I'm not sure about the next two, but the last one certainly had rubber tyres. And this has been converted from solids to rubbers.
Now stick around, because after the break we have a unique opportunity, I think it's a fairly exclusive one, to be taken out to Antique Pete's house. Is that right, mate?
Yep, that's right, Fletch. Yep.
So stick around, we'll see what's going on at Pete's place after the break.
When I was a kid, I loved cars.
I've been a motoring enthusiast all my life.
My life is hot rods, designing them, building them, and racing.
Hand-built with a stainless steel roof.
It won the Monte Carlo Rally 4 times.
Like Dad, I've always been a Ford man.
In '71, this was the fastest four-door car in the world.
Insurance? Shannons, of course.
Have a classic? Well then, it just has to be insured with Shannons. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646. And keep in mind too that the Shannons Club awaits you with their own in-house productions, such as Shannons Club TV, Legends of Motorsport, Driven, End of an Era, and of course Classic Restos is there as well. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. This is out in the middle of nowhere stuff. This is Pete's place. It reminds me, takes me back. It's like as I'm on a bit of old Route 66. Well, after having driven about 15 minutes from Lockhart, we're at Pete's place. 900 acres sitting here, and the ingredients on the back of the pack simply say, enjoy the serenity. Out to the back there, you'll see the rock. That's around about 28 k's from here. So quiet. You can hear your heartbeat, which is probably a good thing. Let's go and see what Pete has up in his barn.
Well, I've always wanted an old car, always, because when I was growing up in the 50s, these were still on the road every day. There's a few of them around, and they used to come into our garage and get things done to them, and so I always was fascinated by them. And I used to love the gearbox in them, the sound of it, and the starter generator combination, and wooden steering wheels, canvas roof, wooden wheels. I was about, when I left school, if I'm going to get a Dodge 4, that's what I really had my heart set on getting a Dodge 4. So about this time, after I'd left school, I met a particular girl, and I thought, I wouldn't mind you as a girlfriend sort of thing, you know, local. And anyway, blow me down, they left town pretty soon after. And I thought, I'd like to get in and see her before I go so I can get her address, where they're going to Canberra, get her address. couldn't get to town because the old man wouldn't lend you the car unless you had something to go to, and that wouldn't have been a good, well, I felt it wouldn't be a good enough excuse. So then I thought, well, I'll ride a horse in. I thought, no, I better not do that. Wasn't very far, wasn't from here, it was from where I live. I thought, oh yeah, well, I'll better not do that. Anyway, then I thought, well, we'll see what happens. And if only I had my own car. Anyway, she left and I never got in touch with her for another 40 years. And I made it a vow, I've got to get a car, I've got to be able to get around. So I was at a bucks party at the Railway Hotel in Lockhart, which I think I shouldn't have been there because I think I might have been underage, but anyway, I was there. And I mentioned Dodge 4s to a bloke, and he said to me, do you want one? And I said, yeah. And he said, right, well, there's one out at Boree Creek, Jack Hamlin's got one, he wants 40 quid for it. Right, deal done. So a couple of weeks later I went out with 40 quid or $80, gave Jack the money and drove her 35 miles home. And I've had it ever since. And I've actually owned it longer than anybody else. So that's the story behind it. I was in the process of making, it was a ute when I bought it, car converted to a ute. And I was going to continue like that, but the back on it was ugly and awful, so I thought I'd build a different back on it. Started to do that, and what it turned out to be later, my brother-in-law said, oh, he said, I got the tub off of one out home, the back part and the doors. I thought, I'll make this into a car. Worst thing I ever did. No money, no knowledge, no tools, no materials out here in the bush, you see, nothing. And I tried doing it, and like things like bandsaws we knew of but didn't have them, and for cutting the timber. So I did it, put it into a car, and it was a bit of a botched up job. And so I shelved the idea because at that time I thought, no, I'll shelve this because I'm not doing a good job here. And I'll move into other things. There was horse-drawn vehicles coming up that were getting burnt and things like that. So I've got to preserve some of this stuff. So I got all those, I shelved this. So in the process of all this, my sister, who married my brother-in-law naturally, said to me one day, she said, do you want the old Dodge? They had a Dodge out there, which the tub come off for this, you see. I said, oh yes, I went out and got it and I brought it home, it's in the shed here, and I thought, I think I'll make this back into a ute because I had the tub for the one, like it's a 25 mile, I had everything for it, so I made this back into a ute and put it on the road. It's never been restored, it's never let me down, it's always been reliable and starts well, and the longest trip I've done to it was about 3 years ago. I took it to Denellicum, to a rally there. Well, now about driving this Fletch, you've got to concentrate. And at 40 mile an hour, when you're doing 40 miles an hour, it's probably like driving a modern car at about 150, probably, perhaps not quite that bad. Let me say it's probably, I'd say a modern day tractor would be better to drive than this if you're looking for driver comfort and ease of driving and all that sort of thing. But I love driving it. It's challenging. They steer well, they handle well. It's noisy, like the gearbox is a very noisy gearbox in these. They always, like, a lot of people will tell you, you can tell a Dodge, the gearbox noise. This vehicle's given me a lot of pleasure over the years. I even had the New South Wales Assistant Commissioner of Police's daughter in at one time for a trip around. Before it was illegal, it was all illegal, but it's been a pleasure to share Classic Restos with you, and I hope people appreciate these sort of vehicles in particular, and not only Dodge but Chevs, Buicks, whatever, and I hope they all get as much pleasure out of it as what I've got out of this one.
Well, I hope you've really enjoyed this week's episode of Classic Restos, filmed in Lockhart, New South Wales. How cool was Antique Pete? And of course the museum in Lockhart. It just goes to show what awaits us in these smaller country towns, and I strongly suggest that you get out and check them out as soon as you can. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching. You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Classic Restos TV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au.
Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance, where you can be a member of the Shannons Club, Pace Farm the Enjoyable Egg, Hare and Forbes Machinery House, and Gun Lake Quarries.